Okay, we've returned from executive session, and I'll once again take attendance to ensure that we have a quorum. Andrea Comer,
Present.
Corey Betts, Avery Gaddis,
Here.
Sabera Gordon, Michael Jefferson,
Here.
Ojala Naeem,
Here.
Mark Pelka,
Here.
Julianne Avalon,
Present.
Kevin Walton,
Present.
Edwin Shirley,
Present.
Kelly Marie Valeris,
Present.
and Melvin Medina.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum, and on September 7th, 2022, the council voted to approve 5 equity joint ventures to Fine Federal Incorporated. This approval did not comply with the amended provisions of RACA and regarding the shared ownership prohibition. Therefore, the council will hear a motion to withdraw approval and deny these EJVs. May I hear a motion?
We can move your motion. We can move your, I'll move the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion carries. The September 7th, 2022 approval decision of the reference equity joint ventures has been withdrawn, and these equity joint venture applications have been denied on the stated ground. We anticipate that these entities will be submitting applications with a revised ownership structure, and that those applications will be reviewed and voted upon by the council in a future meeting. The staff will notify DCP of the decision for appropriate action to be taken. And so that is it. And next on the agenda, we'll hear recommendations from CONRESIC on applications to workforce development plans. Joining us today, CONRESIC is Sarona Sade.
Good morning, everyone, council members. Today we have 3 workforce development plans. 2 have been recommended for approval, and those belong to application numbers ACCE 0000028 for FSD 149 LLC and ACDS 00001212 for Nutmeg Delivery LLC. And those are recommended for approval.
May I hear a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. The 2 workforce plans, number ACCE 00000028 submitted by FFD 149 LLC and ACDS 0001212 submitted by Nutmeg Delivery LLC are approved. Recommendation for denial. May I hear a motion?
So move.
Okay. Move. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I have discussion.
Discussion? I'm
yeah.
sorry, I didn't see you, Kelly. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Chairman. Could you please tell us the reasoning for the denial on this one?
Sure. So recommendation for denial is for application number ACRE 00000015644 submitted by Butter Hartford Holding LLC. And that one, out of the 6 criteria, it scored very low on one of the criteria and had an overall score of 66. And as you all know, a recommendation of approval has a minimum score of 70.
Thank you. So you'll be going back to them with that information, and they have the opportunity to enhance their workforce plan and resubmit. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. The Workforce Development Plan ACRE 000015644 submitted by Butter Hartford Holding LLC is denied, and the applicant can review the denial notice and resubmit any updated workforce plan for review. Next, we'll hear on the further from Cohn-Resnick recommendation for approval. May I hear a motion for equity joint ventures?
So move.
Second,
Second.
any discussion?
Yes, if we could get clarity from some Cohn-Resnick around the.
Would you, sure, I can go ahead and read out the approval entities.
Thank you.
So we have 6 EJV approval recommendations for approval. And I will go ahead and list those applications and their associated businesses. We have AMHF 0008257 for CT Pharma Norwick LLC. We have AMHF 0008258 CT Pharma Newington LLC. AMHF 0008259 Willowbrook Stratford LLC. AMHF 0008260 Willowbrook Enfield LLC. AMHF 0008261 Caring Nature EJV1 LLC, and AMHF 0008262 Caring Nature EJV2 LLC, all recommended for approval.
Thank you, Savannah.
Sure.
Through
And
you,
would you
Mr.
like-
Chair. I'm sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair, just verifying that none of these exceed the EJV limit per statute.
Noted. Is there,
That's, I guess it was a question for Savannah or
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Attorney Matruby. Okay, thank you.
yes. None of those qualification of approval is that they do not exceed the EJV cap.
Thank you.
And I will go ahead and move into the recommendations for denial. We have ACME 0008475 Atlantic Harvest LLC, ACRE 0015668 EJ Ventures 4 LLC, AMHF 0008236 Raybird LLC, AMHF 0008237 EJ Ventures 3 LLC, and AMHF 0008238 Freshline Partners LLC. And this group is recommended for denial based on exceeding the 2 EJV cap that is allowed.
Thank you, but just.
We're kind of,
Deficit. I think we're thinking the same thing.
yeah, we're kind of out of order. Because
well, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, can we go back to the first?
motion for approval.
Right, let's go for approval and then we can move to for the denial that we've kind of gone through that. So shall we go back? Let's, if we don't mind, just bear with me to go back through the first approval, which was, may I hear a motion for.
It's already been made. It's just
Yeah.
call the question.
All right, so any further discussion on the approval? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, so that motion carries and the reference equity joint venture has been approved. So on the issues of denials, in terms of, that was just aforementioned, can I have a motion for the denials?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. The reference equity joint venture application has been denied. And the next on the agenda is the report from our executive director, Jenny Ray, if you would.
Good morning, everyone. Paige, can you share my report, please? Okay, good morning, everyone. It's time for some positive March Madness. Legislative session is underway and the SEC has already had a win. Social equity plans are being shaped to have substantial impact on local communities. Reinvestment meetings are leading to reinvestment planning, and we expect to formally announce the SEC's $10 million cannabis revolving loan fund. So what we'll talk about today, I'll give you updates, is the SEC staffing update, program updates, legislative update, and our March motivations, which will be the things we'll be focusing on during the month of March. So update on the SEC staffing. 2 of the 5 vacant positions have been posted, and as of this morning, 8:37, 3 of the 5 vacant positions have been posted. We have 2 remaining positions that are currently in the final approval phase and expected to be posted soon. And we're working with the Department of Administrative Services to go through their process to approve the job descriptions and the qualifications for each of the positions. The CD administrator is one of the positions that is pending DAS and the EEO final approvals. The paralegal position was posted on February 24th. The program manager for reinvestment was posted on March 6th. The administrative assistant position was posted this morning, and we are pending EEO approval for the posting of the program manager for outreach. Our program updates. Our accelerator program, as I reported out last month, is doing great. Our participants continue to share their experiences and their pleasure for what they're learning and their appreciation for having the accelerator available to them, provided by the council. Again, our Cannabis Revolving Loan Fund program is a $10 million loan fund. We are absolutely in the final stages of crossing the T's and dotting the I's on the final legal matters. We do expect to announce this program very soon. We will do a program announcement, then we will have a webinar information session. We'll hold a couple of sessions for folks to understand the program and how they can apply for it. And then we will open the application period for the first round of lending. The Community Reinvestment Committee has the next meeting on March 10th. We have put together a draft reinvestment RFP, so we will begin looking at how to go out to the community and have those community conversations, and also a list of potential community organizations and programs that the council may be interested in funding. In our legislative session, the win is the Social Equity Council's bill HB 6695 passed favorably out of the General Law Committee on last Thursday with some substitute language, but the committee vote was 23-0, which is great. The bill clarifies the definition of control for social equity applicants and equity joint ventures. It eliminates the requirement for the council to recertify the disproportionately impacted area map on an annual basis, and it modifies the criteria that the SEC uses to identify DIAs by replacing unemployment rate data with an adjusted poverty rate metrics. The next step would be for House Bill 6695 to be filed with the Legislative Commissioner's Office, which I believe that has already happened, and then placed on the House calendar. We are also currently with the DECD in budget conversations. We will be meeting in a workshop subcommittee work session tomorrow via Zoom to further answer questions the legislators may have regarding the SEC budget. Next slide page, please. So just going back to the social equity plan, I think we skipped a slide. Yep, so just updating, last month we reported that we would convene technical assistance webinars. We have done that. We had webinars on February 22nd at 12 o'clock and then again at 4:30. on March 1st at 12 o'clock and then again at 4:30. And we will have a special webinar for the accelerator participants at their March 13th class. We're currently reviewing, we have 5 plans that have been submitted. 1 plan is in its second review and the other 4 plans are in initial review. And I just want to remind you that it takes us about 3 to 4 hours for an initial review of a submitted social equity plan. We are working with the cannabis businesses to tweak and submit the plans, and the technical assistance sections went very well. And we will do another if we are requested, if some people did not attend, but those sessions were recorded, and the deck, the slides were shared with anyone that wanted them. And we will be posting those sessions on our YouTube page as well as our website. And last is our March motivation. So the things that we are working on during the month of March are reviewing of social equity plans, community conversation plan, announcing the loan program, still participating in the legislative session, posting vacant positions, and new council member orientation as we welcome 2 new members today to the council. And with that said, that is my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
I see Councilwoman Gordon has her hand up.
Good morning. I just wanted to follow up on something that I think we've been scheduling and rescheduling and rescheduling and rescheduling, and that's the retreat for council members. I know a lot has been going on, and I was just wondering if there was any update on us being able to have that retreat that was, I think, rescheduled 4 or 5 times since I've been on.
So we have not had any discussions about rescheduling the retreat. We can pick those discussions up. One of the reasons why we did not have it is the council was interested in having sort of a retreat that was closed to the public, and we were not able to do that. And so we will probably, if the council wants to have that retreat, we'll have to figure out, it will probably have to be a public meeting.
Thank you. Avery, Councilman Gaddis?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the indulgence. Just going back to your comment, Jenny, about having a retreat open to the public. I sit on a few public bodies and we have retreats all the time. I don't understand. I really don't understand what you're talking about when you say we can't have a retreat. I think the public fully expects us to get together and figure out a path forward. I have retreats all the time with public officials. I don't understand what you guys are talking about. Back to the loan program. When is that exactly going to be rolled out? Because you said soon, but do you have a date?
We don't have a date. I'm working with Chairman Robertson. So it's a SEC DECD, and it is a brand new program. So there are several matters that have to be finalized. We had to amend our MOU with the DECD, and we also had to have an assistance agreement. So the program itself is, as you know, as the chair of that ad hoc committee, is set. But the legal pieces of it, and like I said, as a brand new loan program, there are just some little nuances that we have to take care of to make sure that the program operates smoothly.
Mr. Chairman, a follow-up now, is it a matter of the paperwork sitting on the bureaucrat's desk? I don't understand why it takes so long to get an end work product. That kind of blows my mind too, but that's all I'm going to say about it. I would like to see some of these things expedited. People are waiting for this program and it's already March. When I was chairing the subcommittee, we made quick work of the product. I don't understand why it's taking so long. That's all. And as far as the accelerator program, exactly how many participants are participating in the accelerator program currently?
I think we have so the accelerator program was open to 35 companies, and we have actively, I believe at my last count, we had like 30 actively participating, attending each of the sessions. We did get a report that there were probably 6 folks that were not regularly participating, and we're going to be addressing their lack of participation.
Well, thank you, Jenny. And listen, if you need my help with anything, let me know, because I would like to see some of these matters move just a little bit faster. I'm really not big into excuses from anyone. I don't make them. I don't expect them from anybody. I just don't see why some of these outstanding things haven't been moved. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gaddis. And to respond to the loan program is essentially set up, ready to go. As Director Clay mentioned, the issue now is DCD has a legal portion that we hope to resolve actually this week, Wednesday. So I anticipate the loan program to be up and rolling out next week.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Councilman Jefferson.
Good morning through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your report, Madam Executive Director. I have a question about the positions, the vacant positions. When can we reasonably expect those positions to be filled?
It's probably going to take another 4 to 6 weeks. So the positions are posted and they're usually posted from 6 to 14 days. I've actually asked them, because we've had in the past so many responses to our postings, that I've asked them to be posted at the minimum amount of time. Once those positions are posted, it'll take, like I said, 6 or 7 days, and then the position will close. The Department of Administrative Services will then review all of the applications that are submitted to see who qualifies. Once those applications are reviewed and a short list is created, that list comes over to the staff. The staff will need to go through all of the applications to see that they meet the preferred qualifications, and we will determine how many people from that list we are going to interview. We will then conduct those interviews. Once those interviews are done, we will submit our preference to the Department of Administrative Services, who will do a background check. Once they do a background check and reference check, they will then make an offer to that individual. So it will probably take a good 4 to 6 weeks before that can happen. It's not the fastest process that we've experienced.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Valeris.
Thank you. Madam Director, question on the legislation. We were looking at another piece of legislation moving through that would allow the hemp farmers to cultivate cannabis. Do we have an update on where that legislation sits right now?
I don't have an update on where it sits at this moment, but I can have Christina follow up with the council with an update on that.
Hi, Councilwoman Valeries. The hemp bill is actually on the General Law Committee agenda today. So I will be watching for that and sending an update.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
Any other further questions for Director Clay? With that, then let's move on to our committee reports. Committee Chair Andrea Comer for Finance Committee.
Yes, thank you and good morning. Through you, Mr. Chair, the Finance Committee met on February 28th and reviewed the financials through February 28th. That report showed that the SEC budget for fiscal year 23 has a remaining balance of $9.2 million, the bulk of which is in the community reinvestment and marketing and branding lines, as well as roughly $844,000 remaining for Oaksterdam. The Finance Committee did have a robust conversation about the short window in which the council has to expend the allocated reinvestment dollars, and a request from the Outreach Committee by way of its chair, Gordon, to utilize funds from either the marketing or reinvestment lines to launch community conversations. I want to thank the committee members, particularly Councilman Walton, for the thoughtful consideration of this request. The committee did vote to recommend that the resources be allocated to the Outreach Committee for community conversations and outreach, which is in line with that committee's responsibility as outlined by the Reinvestment Committee. So with that, and through you, Mr. Chair, I would move that the council approve the Finance Committee's recommendation to allocate resources to the Outreach Committee to launch community conversations upon submission of a budget and a plan.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I just want to,
Discussion,
sorry.
please, Councilwoman Gordon.
I was just going to say thank you so much. And I think this is going to really kick off some really important conversations that need to happen. I think since we formed this council, we're in our second year now. I think it's really important for us to connect to the community. And we have been talking about the community reinvestment and how we can ensure that those most harmed by the war on drugs can see some participation in what we're doing. So we think this is a really important piece of the work. And I thank the Finance Committee for moving forward on this. We will have Councilman Walton and Councilman Betts are very, very, very interested in us working on this together and making sure that we're doing the due diligence of the council and working with the communities. And I'm gonna make an appeal to new council members. If anyone's interested in joining the outreach committee, we're gonna be doing town halls in all of the DIAs and working with nonprofit partners who are already established and doing the work in the community to solicit some feedback from the community on how they would like to see these dollars reinvested. Looking at my friend Mel to say, hey, you should come over and join us. All right, thank you, Councilwoman Comer.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brewer. Any further discussion? And I would echo that. One of the things I'm really excited about is having something up and running, something tangible, and finally moving the needle, as Councilman Gaddis alluded to earlier, is having some action, because it's been a long road in terms of work. With that in mind, I would like to see all in favor as far as the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Committee Chair Comer, is there any other comments?
No, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for your report, and thank you for the members of the Finance Committee. We'll now move to the Governance Committee.
Thank you. I have no updates from the Governance Committee at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the Governance Committee while we have you? Okay. Thank you and the Governance Committee for your contribution. And now we will move over to the very popular Reinvestment Committee and our committee chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Reinvestment Committee met on the 28th of February. It was the first meeting. We discussed the sort of roles and responsibilities of the committee, of the staff, and the process that we're looking to put forward. At this time, we are partnering with the Outreach Committee, who will be conducting some community listening sessions and town halls to better understand from the community itself, where are there gaps that we should be looking at and addressing from a reinvestment perspective. Simultaneously, the staff is working on putting together an RFP to request proposals within areas of impact that the committee has highlighted for funding opportunities before the end of this fiscal year. We have a meeting this Friday where we will be reviewing updates on sort of where things are moving with both the community conversations through the Outreach Committee, as well as reviewing the RFP, as Executive Director Clay mentioned during her report. And I'll ask my co-chair if I missed anything to please feel free to jump in.
Oh, you're a rock star. You covered everything. Thank you.
Any further questions or for discussion? Comments?
I just wanted to add really quickly that I think I know I was missing from the meeting, but we've been talking a lot about thinking about the investment, and like there's already, community groups that are doing really good work and trying to figure out how we could ensure that we're supporting those organizations that are already in the community and doing the work. And I think as someone who runs a nonprofit, so much of your time is spent seeking funding, and we want to figure out how we could work with organizations that are already vetted and we know are in the community and are already doing this work, and partnering that also with newer organizations that we're not familiar with. I think that's due diligence of the council, and that's probably one of the best ways. Right now we have, I think, roughly $6 million that needs to be spent before the end of this year. And I think those of us on this council, I think there's lots of conversations that we can have with organizations that are in the communities and doing the work. And I think we have to figure out a vetting process for how we decide who we partner with and how we do that partnership. But I think it is a lot of times organizations would love to have some sort of investment to be able to expand their reach. If you think about, there's lots of really good mentorship programs. There's lots of workforce development programs out there that are kind of, they would say, shovel ready. And I think as a council, we should figure out how to work with some of those organizations in addition to the newer organizations that will be coming through an RFP process. But just wanted to name that that's something that we've also been discussing and thinking about how do we work with those that are already vetted and doing work in the community.
Great. Thank you.
If I may, through the chair, I just want to add to what Councilmember Gordon said, that I think harm reduction and organizations doing harm reduction work are going to be critically important when we think about reinvestment, particularly because what is so significant about the Social Equity Council and Connecticut's now policy on cannabis use is that it's shifted it from a public health model and harm reduction work, specifically meeting people where they're at, needle exchange programs, et cetera, aligns with the vision of a public health model. And so when we think about reinvesting in communities, there are a number of organizations who have boots on the ground right now, assisting largely urban core areas in Connecticut that are kind of at the forefront of dealing with opioid crisis and other issues. And so just want to flag that harm reduction work is a critical component of community reinvestment.
Thank you. With that in mind, then let's segue to Councilwoman Gordon's Outreach and Marketing Committee.
I'm sorry, you missed my hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Valeris.
No worries.
Please.
So just a couple quick comments on the RFP process. It is, state's requirement that there is a RFP process. We can't just, provide funding to organizations that we want to provide funding for. With that said, though, we can invite those organizations to apply for the funding. The other thing that I may suggest is looking at what types of investments you would like to make and kind of determining how much money you want to put in those different buckets, and then making sure your RFPs are, you're collecting RFPs that meet the needs of those buckets, and may suggest that workforce development as a community reinvestment line item be included in the RFP process. I think there's some shovel-ready programs also on workforce development that we could get out the door fairly quickly as well. But I think as you're framing out how you want this money to be spent, which areas and how much money do you want to allocate to those areas in your RFP process will be helpful for you. And I will do my best to be on the meeting on Friday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you bringing up the workforce development piece, because it is important for us to remember that a lot of the agencies currently in the state are federally funded and therefore cannot engage on workforce development as it relates to cannabis businesses. So I'm hoping that we can better understand where there are opportunities and organizations that can provide that support. And I know you've got a lot of those, a lot of understanding in that realm. So it'll be helpful to identify that and make sure we can get that bucket set aside as well this year.
Thank you. Councilwoman Comer.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just a flag that I know we do have the RFP requirement, but I'm wondering, in the spirit of expediency that's been discussed, if it might make sense to just sort of look at the community investment fund model and replicate that, because it does invest in communities. It does have a process that is pretty seamless, and they're housed at DECD. So getting that information should be an easy task. That's all. Thank you.
And we will make that readily available.
That would be great to review at Friday's meeting if possible, Chairman.
Great. Any other comments, questions, discussions? Well, with that in mind, shall we go to the Outreach Committee and Chairwoman Gordon?
Good morning again, everyone. So we are, obviously, we keep talking about expediency and what's really important. So we have identified all of DIAs that exist and kind of, I think we're thinking of prioritizing Hartford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Stamford, New Haven, and as where we'll start. But I also think that we'd like to have community conversations in Meriden, Ansonia, Norwalk, Bristol, Torrington, and the Norwich, New London area. Our goal is to have one event per city or per area initially, working with an anchor nonprofit in each city. So we're thinking about, like, for example, in New Haven, there's Concorp, they already have a space. There's a lot already that's happening there. And if we partner with an anchor nonprofit, and I think we'll just have to, this is where we'll have to go back to figure out the, like, how can we partner with an agency, and then as the state also provide refreshments for individuals that show up. And what's really important, from a language access perspective, we'd love to have every single meeting translated and every single meeting transcribed, so everyone can have access to that. For staff on the call, it would be great. I know that the legislature works with a specific transcription company that transcribes public hearings. If we could be able to figure out what that process is and how we could, they're already, I assume, a state contractor, we should be able to figure out how we can get access to that entity. And then also we should also figure out who the state uses for public meetings to translate those. So those things, I think we are kind of just out of the box. We already have them. The state already works with certain companies to do this. That's something that we'd like to be able to use. We'd also like to have these meetings recorded by CTN if possible, so everyone can have access to them who cannot make it in person. Once we're done putting together the list, I'm going to share this with the council. If anyone is aware of, for example, I gave Concorp as the example of an anchor nonprofit in New Haven. It doesn't mean just to clarify, we're not funding this organization at this moment. We're just working with a nonprofit that has an established reputation in the city, and specifically has space that we can use, or has access to space that we can, be able to work with. We're thinking of having between 150 and 200 people at each of these events. It could be more, it could be less, but I do think if we're having it where you can access it online, individuals could be able to provide their feedback as well. We want to get these started as soon as possible. So once staff is able to get back to us about what the process is, about figuring out the transcription and the translation, we'd like to see if we could be up and running within the next 2 weeks. We'll have a budget to the committee by the end of this week. I think I just need a little bit of clarity from, I don't know how much space costs. So we just want to be able to kind of sketch out what some of the overhead costs will be initially. And I believe we want to start in New Haven. We have this council has a lot of ties in New Haven, so I think that's the first place for us to start. And then we'll work our way through the different DIAs. If anyone who is not on the outreach committee would like to participate, we're happy to have any help. Once I share the document, if you can think of an organization in your city that already has space that we can work with, I think that would be helpful. And then I think what we're doing is it's coming from a space of just listening. We're not making any promises, but I do think it's really important to listen to the community. And obviously we're going to hear things that we might not be able to have an impact on. But in the meantime, the reinvestment committee is creating the RFP process and doing all of that, by the time we're able to synthesize all of the information that we have received, we'll be able to know kind of what buckets we should be funding in each individual area. I think there will be similarities, but I think it might be different in different spaces. And we really want to do our due diligence to do a lot of marketing and outreach so the community knows that this is happening and this is an opportunity to have us hear from them. And I also think it would be great to have more council members than just the three of us that are on outreach attend if possible. So there can be a showing so that we actually do want to hear from the community. If there's any questions on our plan so far.
No question, but just a suggestion that I'm happy to provide certain, suggestions for the Hartford area in terms of places that I think would be willing and anxious to actually host an event like that.
Thank you. and one of the things I feel like normally I would always go to a school, but I'm not sure, just based on the nature of what we're doing, if that's going to be the most appropriate place for us to be holding events. They have lots of space, but I think we have to think a little outside of the box here.
Any further questions, comments?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the fact that we're dealing with cannabis, I want to avoid schools. I'm not really into that. Like, let's not even have that on our radar screen. And I know, Councilwoman Gordon, you did not, but you know, look, the long and short of it, I could have easily got into this weed business myself, but I have kids and I don't know how I feel about it. At the end of the day, I think we need to be very careful with how we deal with our business and making sure somehow kids aren't caught up in it. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you for that. Any additional comments?
I just wanted to be responsive to Councilman Gordon's invitation earlier on this call that I'd be happy to join the committee and help out in whatever way possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, and I'd like to thank the members of the Outreach Committee and Marketing Committee. And next, we'd like to move to Committee Chair Shirley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Policy Committee met on February 16th. We got an update on the Social Equity Plan review, which you've already heard. And we also were updated on legislative activities, which also have preceded this report. And I'm open to any others things I may have forgotten that our members may have want to bring up to this body.
Questions, comments?
No. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Shirley. And thank you to members of the Policy Committee as well in your continued work. And now we will turn to workforce development. And Chairwoman Valeris, do we have a report of recommendations from the Workforce Development Committee?
Thank you. So the Workforce Development Committee did not meet formally. However, I have an update on the Cannabis Workforce Development Coordinator position. It was posted. We have an overwhelming number of candidates in the hundreds. And so this is going to be quite a process of working with HR to whittle those candidates down to a manageable number of people to interview. So I'm expecting that process is probably going to take at least a few months to get through that process and get someone on board working at the Office of Workforce Strategy. I just wanted to reiterify Councilwoman Naeem's comments with regards to federal funded dollars and being able to have, there's not a single dime of federal dollars can touch anything that has to do with cannabis. So when we think about our workforce development system through the American Job Centers, they're all federally funded. We looked at what other states are doing, and thank you to Attorney Matrivi for his in-depth review of legal applications and what other states are doing. Other states have made the decision to make a very, very clean split, that not a single penny of any federal supported processes, whether it's a computer, a system, a person, a building that is funded with any dime of federal dollars is not utilized for anything having to do with cannabis. So with that, when we think about just my staff, we are all funded through braided funding sources of state and federal dollars, except for myself. So that leaves a small team of 3 down to 1 as we go through this process. We do have a budget expansion. Hopefully we'll pass this legislative session that will move my entire staff to state line items on the general fund, which would be helpful because we could then utilize their knowledge and resources to help move this work forward. But I just wanted to let everyone know kind of where we're at with that. And I think it'll be very appropriate for us to do a request for proposals for a workforce initiative out of the reinvestment committee.
Great.
Happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Jefferson.
Yes. Good morning, Councilwoman Valeries. Through you, Mr. Chair. Councilwoman, do you have any idea as to who can provide training for those in the DIAs for work in the cannabis business, since the regional workforce development agencies are now out of the picture? And am I stating that correctly? They're basically out because of their nexus with the federal dollars?
Yes, they are. There are other states who have had people from their American Job Centers kind of taken out of their American Job Centers and put in a different location, and kind of building a parallel system that is all federal, that is all state funded. That's, you know, a way we can go, but there's also national online entities that are providing cannabis training for people. We also have some of our colleges who are interested in developing programming. So when we have the workforce coordinator on board, they'll be able to go through a needs assessment for the industry and then determine what programs are needed. And then we can start working with our state entities that are state funded to build out programming. But I think currently, to immediately being able to utilize some online out-of-state universities could be appropriate for the short term.
Let me just ask a follow-up through you, Mr. Chair. The if that's the case, should we expect to start this process months from now after the coordinator is hired, or is there anything we can do in the interim?
In the interim, we can do an RFP for an out-of-state entity to run some training programs for us that are cannabis related. We can use some of this funding for workforce development programs for members of the designated affected areas if it's not cannabis related training. So we could, push people into the AJC system to do training programs that are not related to cannabis, but would also help them get a job. Maybe not all of them want to work in the cannabis industry, but need upskilling and reskilling and certifications to work in other industries of interest to them. And those programs can be funded with SEC dollars and run immediately through the AJCs and the other programming that we have.
And final question, I think. How soon can we get the RFP out for existing training or out-of-state training programs so that we can actually move and get folks trained in the DIAs?
I'll work with Executive Director this week and with Councilwoman Naima and Gordon on getting an RFP out in the next week or so.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Councilwoman Comer?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, just I guess a flag about Section 39 of the statute that sort of requires us to create a workforce training program for folks from disproportionately impacted areas. And it's supposed to be done in coordination with DCD and the Department of Labor. So just wanted to make sure that we are, as we go through this process, whether it's identifying an entity externally or not, that we are aligned with our responsibilities statutorily. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Comer. Councilwoman Medina?
Apologies, as a new council member, there's just some background information I might not have. So just a question on the workforce development pipeline. Is there a certification that requires the hiring of people who would enter any workforce development program or incentive for companies to hire those folks? I guess a concern would be the development of a program that ultimately people are hired because it's kind of an open call scenario among businesses anyways. And so thinking about the process of someone, especially someone impacted with a prior criminal record or what might be, kind of engaging in a workforce development pipeline that ultimately doesn't result in a job at the end of that pipeline. I'm curious if we have best practices in other industries that lead to a more effective development pipeline.
Absolutely. All the work that the Office of Workforce Strategy is doing is employer driven and connected to employers at the front end. So they're determining what their needs are, when they need them, and then making commitments to hire. So no one will go through a training program that doesn't have a job at the end of it. Also, the workforce plans do require people, the organizations and entities to hire people through these job training programs. So yes, to your answer, we'll be very closely monitoring that process.
Thank you. Councilwoman Palka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Councilmember Valories. Thank you for all the hard work you're doing on the Workforce Committee, and best wishes with the recruitment. Something I've been wondering about is whether the target positions that individuals receiving workforce development training, whether the target positions are in the cannabis industry or broader positions. I'm glad that we're focusing on the DAA, of course, communities, as we're trying to begin to repair the harm caused by prior enforcement of cannabis laws. But is there some way at the beginning from the design we could target the a destination workforce wise for people receiving the workforce development training, so that we could either have goals or a plan as to whether we're helping people to thrive in the cannabis industry or thrive more broadly. It feels like we can look back on it as we move forward and kind of track our investments, but I've been wondering how to balance those two desires, both to ensure that as the industry takes off, people from the disproportionately impacted areas receive this, the kind of upskilling and other resources to thrive in the industry, but also we're looking at broader areas where they can take their talents and skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So the governor's office and the legislature put in a $70 million investment for job training programs. Those programs are called under the umbrella of Career Connect. Yep. We have launched a fairly robust campaign to drive people into these job training programs. There is a single portal, virtual portal. It's a front door for every job training program in the state that is short-term certifications, non-credit. These programs are linked to jobs in manufacturing, IT, healthcare, infrastructure, green energy, and bioscience. There are opportunities across the state. So we are doing a marketing push to the areas that have been historically underserved, which I'm sure there's a large overlap of the DIA neighborhoods. On top of that, I have all kinds of statistics that I can share with you on where our marketing plan is going. But we can continue to provide opportunities for any of your community-based organizations. We have a marketing toolbox that they can access and they can push out into their communities. These are programs that are available to almost every person in the state of Connecticut. We're really targeting underserved, marginalized populations. They come with a full suite of supportive services such as childcare, transportation, housing stipends, food stipends, access to technology. Pretty much every barrier that would prevent someone from actively participating in a 10 to 20 week job training program is removed for them. In some of them, there's stipends that they receive as well. And again, all of these opportunities are linked to industry recognized credentials with a commitment to hire at the end. So in the immediate interim, like today, right, we can go out to these community-based organizations in your regions that you all know well, and we can connect them with the information they need with regards to Career Connect. and start driving their residents and their communities into these job training programs. This would not cost the Social Equity Council additional funding. However, there could be things that as this funding weans down, we have 60 million invested in the job training program specifically over the next 3 years. It could be something that the Social Equity Council might want to supplement for programming that is not related to cannabis. So you can do that. So it's really the cannabis related programming that we have to set up kind of a side-by-side workforce system for doing that.
I understand. Thank you. Through the chair, it'd be great maybe for the outreach subcommittee to consider how to incorporate some of what you just shared. Council member, I've heard in different contexts, but for some reason, seeing you virtually to the screen, speaking to me directly, it really resonated in ways that reading various budget documents and reading about OWS's work hadn't fully, which is, but I wonder if how that can be conveyed to people who participate in the forums, and also I know you'll provide us with continued guidance about how to avoid any overlap between the federally funded work that you do and the cannabis work, because we got to keep them 100% separate. You've done a really consistent and thorough job of reminding us of that. I know you will in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, so I will attend the outreach committee, reinvestment committee meeting on Friday, and I'll provide additional information at the committee meeting on the toolbox and information that can be utilized to share with residents in the DEIs. We do track who is in those programs, including by zip code. So we could, by zip code, be able to pull people out and provide some data as to who is in those programs from which neighborhoods.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilwoman Pelka and Councilwoman Gordon.
Yeah, so thank you, Councilman Pelka, for starting what I was gonna then follow up with. I'm not sure if I've seen this, but based on the licenses that we are offering or that are offered in Connecticut, is there a list of like types of jobs that are going to be needed? So like, for example, in the cultivation space, there's certain kinds of jobs. In the product manufacturing job space, there's certain kind of jobs. And like, there might be a way to, in addition to the listening part of like listening to the community, to also be able to share information on what's coming, and also connect to what job training programs are available connected to the jobs that would be that are going to be coming, and kind of a timeline, which I think would be very helpful. And in my mind, I'm trying to think about how we can connect the workforce piece to it, from how we can pull the workforce piece out of this and connect it back to like kids who are graduating from high school, who are not necessarily going to be going to college, who might go through a path of the workforce investment boards, like thinking about some of the advanced manufacturing programs that exist, and how can our resources supplement similar programs that are geared toward the cannabis industry, but essentially could be geared towards any other industry, and like how we can build up kind of short term. So similar to what you were saying is like, but making sure that we're being clear about what are the needs of the industry that we need to meet, because what I am worried about is like where we are in Connecticut right now around workforce, right? There's lots of jobs that we don't have the bodies to do. And here we are creating a new industry with a new market. And we have the opportunity to solve that problem on the front end, to say, we need to make sure that we are building the workforce that's necessary to sustain the industry. So we're not ending up like seeing other large companies who have to leave Connecticut because of a workforce problem. So, and I think in thinking about DIAs, like we should make sure that we're creating the thing within the DIA that funnels to the workforce of the cannabis industry, and making that as seamless as possible as we're going through like building out this system. So I'm just trying to think about like how we can coordinate both things and make sure that they're working in the best way possible and everyone has access to all of the information. Once we have some sort of a marketing arm of the SEC, or figured out what we're going to be doing to share information to the SEC, I think that would be helpful. So we're getting the word out to the community in addition to listening to them.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm basically you just explained my job. So the biggest role that I do is coordinating and collaborating across all of these different entities and aligning up the workforce system so that we're not creating, you know, a lot of individual silos and people have to hunt for what is available for them. So we will be doing this work moving forward. Again, I just do want to remind you, it's just me at this moment from our team until we get this new person onboarded and our budget expansion put through. So it has been a little bit slow on the get up, but there's been a lot of foundational work done. We do have documents that we shared very long time ago. I'm happy to share again that kind of show the different types of jobs in each of the categories, whether it's cultivators or manufacturers or retail. We do have that information. I can share that with the outreach committee, and that's definitely information that we can start to share with people as we start building out programs and as we start finding national programs that we could access immediately.
Right. Thank you, Councilwoman Gordon. Councilwoman Avalon.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I think Councilwoman Valerie's just addressed this, but I was going to say in terms of connecting with other entities, one thing that we have seen over the past year are job fairs that have been established by large companies that are existing in the market now. So last summer, I know CT Pharma and Verano both held large cannabis job fairs. And so there are, there's precedent in the market for doing these larger events. And there's also knowledge already established what people are looking for, like what the specific job types are and what the qualifications are. So we can leverage that. I think hopefully it'll help your very small staff to be able to get a jump start. So we appreciate all you're doing in this area.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Avalon. Councilwoman Comer.
Thank you. And yes, Councilwoman Valerie, appreciate all the work that you're doing. And again, I think that's part of the reason why we should leverage the resources and human capital at the Department of Labor. A, because it's in the statute, but B, because they have significantly more bandwidth to sort of help with fleshing this out. And speaking of the Department of Labor in New York, their Department of Labor has a website that's specifically devoted to cannabis career exploration, and it talks about training opportunities and the skills that might be needed. So we might want to take a look at that, and perhaps you as chair of workforce can have a meeting with folks at the Department of Labor to sort of have that conversation and determine how we might replicate what they're doing in New York.
Absolutely, I can have that conversation with the commissioner.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman Comer. Any other comments? Well, with that in mind, thank you, everyone. We move now to the good of the order, new business updates, information at this time.
Just wanted to, I know this has been said before, but a welcome to Councilman Medina. Very excited to have your expertise and experience on board. So welcome.
Thank you for that. Both Councilwoman Medina and Councilwoman Avalon, welcome to the party. So with that in mind, I would like to call motion to adjourn. If there's no other business.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Everyone, thank you so much for all your hard work. I appreciate it. And we look forward to our next meeting and creating some action as a result of this meeting today. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.